All right, welcome, everybody. It is 2:00 and you are in the right place and you are on time. If it's okay with you, let's do some housekeeping and some intro and give a couple more people a chance to pop on. And there's Coach James.
Hey, I heard about the Florida people, so I am with you on that. I am at Florida in my heart, man.
Me too.
Yeah.
You're not down there right now, though, are you?
I am not at the moment, unfortunately, no. But that's where I sold real estate, and like I said, my wife and I take the kids down there almost every year, and if things keep moving in the right direction, who knows? Maybe I will be calling in from Florida a lot more often. So.
Oh, I love it. Well, I think I'll be hosting the show from Florida at some point.
There you go.
So we'll make it happen.
I love
All right,
it.
guys. I'll introduce myself again. I'm Monica Weekly. I've been the host of the Espresso Agent Mastery Series for quite some time, actually. And the amazing people at Espresso Agent are completely focused on added value. Because, of course, you're getting, the aspects of the tool that are helping you grow your business. Not only the data, but the dialer and using it as a CRM and all those things. Important, great. But they're not stopping there. They want to, a couple times a month, expose you to some incredible minds in the business, top talent, a lot of coaches. We have top agents as well coming and talking to us about something that they do really well or they understand at a high level. And the fact that you're here tells me you're growth oriented. And I don't know how you feel about that, Coach James, but anybody that is investing in themselves on a constant basis is all right by me.
That's it.
Bet on them, right?
I think that's awesome. It's a must, quite frankly. I think it's a must.
I agree. Okay, couple housekeeping things. As you know, if you've been on these, we do mute you, but that does not mean we don't want to hear from you. We absolutely want to hear from you. Please interact. Please ask questions and use the tools that we've kind of been using over here under the chat bar or the Q&A bar. I'll monitor them. And if I can't ask them right at the time that you post it, I'll certainly circle back before we log out here at about 3:00 Eastern Standard Time. So we do want to hear from you. The other thing that always gets asked, and it still will get asked again because somebody will come on late and ask it, is, hey, can I watch this back at some point? And the answer, of course, is yes. Espresso Agent has an incredible YouTube channel with all of these recordings from the past couple years there. And they have the little topic at the bottom. So you can kind of scroll through and see if something pops out at you. And certainly this one is no exception. It will be there. I don't know that it's uploaded immediately, so give it a day or two, and I'm sure it'll get there, all right? Let's see. Eden says we're having issues going Facebook Live, which we usually do, but this time maybe we'll skip that, or maybe they'll figure it out. All right, we've had a couple more people pop on, so let's get going. Let me introduce to you Coach James Hotaling.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
And Coach James is one of our very favorite, and I think maybe one of our most frequent coaches on, actually. And here's why. Because, James, you're really you're really relatable, and you're really practical. And that is so refreshing. And when you talk about different subjects, you just present it in a way that I think everybody sort of appreciates. So hats off to you.
Okay. That's all. I appreciate that. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I try to look at things as simply as possible. I think for people to change behavior or to take action, they have to be able to see it. It has to make sense, right? Mm-hmm. Before they're gonna step out and do anything different from the norm. So I don't know. Maybe that's part of where that comes from.
Well, it's awesome. And yeah. You run your own coaching business now. You got into real estate right out of college, right?
I did, yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I try to do, if not every day, I do it probably 3 to 4 days a week on my Facebook channel, is Make Today Count. It's my little daily episode. And this week I've been getting requests and comments about people asking me about my story. And so I said, I'm going to take a little break this week from maybe a training topic or whatever, and I'm just going to share my story. So I've been doing that in little increments this week so far, and it's been fun to kind of go back and recount and remember all the little things that kind of led me to today,
It's like looking at an old photo album and like,
yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I sold real estate in Indian Rocks Beach was where I started. And then I kind of gravitated across the bay and I sold, sort of the south of Tampa, like Sun City Center and Ruskin, Apollo Beach, that area for a while when I was actually selling real estate. So all these people that are on from Florida, it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Miss
And
it.
you weren't from there. So you moved
No.
however far away that, I don't know how many thousands of miles that is from where you're
Yeah.
from. You
Yeah.
literally started from scratch. So you can
Yep.
relate to anybody's scenario
Right.
there.
Yep, that's it. And I can still remember, and I'm on coaching calls and I'm talking about getting out there and knocking on doors, or I'm saying, hey, do this or do this. It's like I have this picture in my head of doing that. And maybe that's part of what comes across as I'm talking to clients is they sense the reality of it because I was there, I was doing that. And so it's been a fun journey, that's for sure.
So then you started coaching and training because you found that you enjoyed that. You went to work for who's now your mentor, Mike Ferry, correct?
I did. I spent 4 years, doing workshops and one-on-one coaching. That was actually from 2006 to 2010. So this is my 8th year of being back on my own again. And Mike is great. I mean, he was a great mentor. I learned an awful lot following him and then ultimately working for him. So can't say enough good things about MFO.
I bet now. And so now in your coaching practice, you have one-on-one clients, and then what else do you do in your practice?
I've kind of simplified. I've boiled it down to the one-on-one clients, and then some of the training, Real Training Live, for example, is a weekly format that I do. I used to charge for that for many years. That was a paid program, but I just made the decision, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months ago to just go free, you know what I mean? And use that as a vehicle to try to draw people to the content. And then from there, they often reach out and say, hey, do you do one-on-one coaching or whatever? And so, I've really simplified.
Isn't that relatable in the real estate world that if we come from contribution
That's
and
how it works.
help people, they'll call you when they need you, right?
That's exactly how it works. So
what a great pattern you're setting for us. So let's get into time management. We need to know it all. Break it down in your normal fashion and help us get out of our own damn heads.
Okay. Yeah.
Time management mastered.
Yeah. I can't promise to solve all of your time management problems, but I'm gonna try to look at it from a little different perspective maybe than you've heard before, as far as that goes. And one of the things that I always say as I begin a session like this is that for many years I heard the phrase, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard the phrase, that knowledge is power, right? And what I started to realize maybe a year or so ago is that that's really not true. Knowledge by itself is not power. It's knowledge applied. That's where the power comes in. So really, when you kick off a session like this, when you sit down and you start to watch or you listen, you take notes, you've got to make a decision that you're going to do something with what you hear. Okay. It's not just about showing up. It's not just about writing out your notes. It's about engaging from the standpoint of saying, you know what, that is something that speaks to me, and I'm committing to doing something with that in the next 24 hours. And it might only be one thing. You might come away with 1 nugget, 2 nuggets, I don't know, from our conversation today. But my encouragement as we get started is to decide in advance that you are going to commit to changing something or doing something different based on what we talk about. Okay?
It's like buying a car and not getting a driver's license.
Yeah, right. Or not putting any fuel in the tank, right? It just kind of sits there and looks nice, but you're not going anywhere with it. So what's the point?
Right.
But yes, time management, I mean, let's be honest. This is one of the universal struggles that agents have, that people have. And there's a reason for that. It's very simple. And that is because there are only so many hours in the day, and yet there are a million things that need to get done, right? The joke is that on the day we die, our inbox will be full and our to-do list will be a mile long, right? It's like you're never going to get caught up.
Right.
And I think a big portion of what I've tried to, I've come to realize, I guess, with regard to time management is it's all up here. There's so much of this that is mental, and it's about learning to prioritize. It's learning to accept the reality of the limitations we have, because I don't know yet. I've heard lots of people trying, but nobody that I know of has figured out a way to add more hours to the day yet. Mm-hmm. So until that happens, we're not going to get any more time every day. So as we look at this whole subject, I mean, I made a bunch of notes of things that I wanted to make sure I talked about, but I want to look at it from a different perspective. And one of the first points I wrote down is that most of our time management issues are going to be solved by a change in our attitude, not just a better app, right? Or a better day planning system. Most of what we deal with in terms of struggling with time management is going to happen up here first. It's a change in our attitude, okay? So the point I wrote down is that this thing we call time management, it's a function of two things. Number one is that we have to have a stronger belief in the value of our time, okay? We just have to have a stronger belief in what we are worth when we go to work. And then secondly, it is developing the discipline to act on that. So there we are, back into action again, right? Mm-hmm. So if we look at those two things, we say, look, first of all, I have to have a better understanding of the value of my time. And then secondly, I've got to make decisions. I've got to prioritize. I've got to do things differently based on what I've just accepted as the reality of the value of my time. And I call it time is money, because I really don't think that a person can change the way they manage their time until they understand the value of what their time is worth. They won't make the changes in behavior until they realize that. Mm-hmm. So time, in other words, time is an asset. It is currency. You need to equate those two things, all right? Mm-hmm. I've said it for a long time to agents that if agents would spend their time or treat their time the way they treat their money, that things might work out a little bit better for them, mm-hmm. right? Because that's the way it is. It is a currency, and you need to decide where you're going to spend it, right?
So is that the equivalent of monetizing your calendar in a way, if you think about it that way?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that's a great way to look at it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, for you, I don't know if, as you've personally kind of gone through this, issue of time management and trying to figure things out, I don't know if you, for you, have realized that certain things pay a better reward back. Certain things you do, certain things you engage in are just going to pay you more money. Oh, so you've got to look at managing your time as if you've been given a pot full of cash and you're an investor and you're trying to figure out, well, where do I put all of this money to get the best rate of return? Mm-hmm. Same thing. I've got a certain number of hours available to me today. What do I do with them? Where do I invest them? What activities do I get involved in that will give me the best rate of return? Mm-hmm. Okay, does that kind of make sense?
That's a great way to look at it. Like each day, if you have 8 hours to work, you've got $8 or $80, however you want to break it up.
However you want to look at it. And your goal is the same thing as if you were investing money. Your goal is to get to a point where there's a strong rate of return. Well, same thing with your time. You can do a lot of things. I mean, there are so many things to choose from in this business that you can get involved in. And the reality is every single thing we do has a value attached to it. Okay? Every activity has a value, has a dollar sign, a dollar amount attached to it. And so it becomes, first of all, an awareness of that, accepting that, and then deciding, okay, well, what kind of rate of return do I want? What kind of income do I want, so to speak, from the time I'm going to invest today? So it's a little different way of looking at it.
Do you mean reorganizing my junk drawer is not the same as calling clients?
It might be if it gives you enough peace of mind to actually do what you're supposed to do when the junk drawer is cleaned out, right? I've often joked for years that I need to keep writing a book called The Things I've Heard, all the excuses I've heard over the years.
Yeah, that's good.
And I tell you, man, there are agents who tell me that one of the things that keeps them from prospecting is a junk drawer, is a messy desk, is just an inoperable work environment, and there's a reality to that. I think there is. So sometimes you got to work it into the schedule to clean up a little bit, right?
You got it.
But because of this idea that everything has a value to it, then you need to decide, well, okay, how do we place a value on that? How do we decide what this activity is worth? Because if I'm going to decide to do it or not do it, I guess I need to know what it's worth. So one easy way to do that is just think about, what would you pay somebody else to do that for you, right? If you're debating doing a particular thing, well, how much is it worth to you? What would you pay somebody to do it? And see, the problem is that you might say, okay, I'm going to spend some amount of time, or I'm going to pay somebody to upload my listings for me. I'm going to pay somebody to fully market all of my listings for me. And I'm going to pay them $15 an hour or whatever. But see, the problem for a lot of agents is they decide they're going to be the ones to do it. Okay, they decide, I'm going to write the feature sheets. I'm going to write the ad copy. I'm going to shoot the video. I'm going to go take the pictures because I'm better at it, because nobody's going to do it the way I do it. And so in their mind, they start tricking themselves into thinking that that activity is worth more because they're doing it, right? So suddenly, all of a sudden, it becomes so important. It becomes so valuable, but they forget that what they're earning for all those hours they're spending is the same thing they would pay somebody else to do it for them, okay? So I use an analogy of a doctor, okay? So you've got a doctor and they're in their surgery and they're doing their thing, right, on the operating table, and they get big bucks for doing that. But let's say that surgeon came out of the operating room, went to their office, and kind of booted their staff out and said, you know what, I'm going to spend the next 3 hours inputting insurance information for all my patients, okay? Now, they were paying their staff 15, 18, 20 bucks an hour, whatever, to do it. Does that activity all of a sudden become worth $1,000 an hour, $5,000 an hour because the doctor's sitting there doing it? The answer is no. So the activity or the value of something that you're going to do is not based on who's doing it. It's based on the activity itself, what you would pay somebody. So you can justify all day long, all you want. You know, I'm going to go take these pictures. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to, you know, spend the time, all this other support work that we do. And then we sit back and wonder, well, why is my income so low? Well, it's because of the percentage of hours you invest in low paying activity. I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, I hope that's making sense. I hope that's resonating, because all of us, we have to look at this giant list of things to do, right? And we've got this little tiny window of time, and we have to say, all right, well, what do I put into that window? Which of all these activities do I have to put into that window? And that's where the prioritizing comes in. So we have to have a way to measure this.
You got it.
And, okay. And the best way to do it is to create, you know, a value for everything. So a good question I often ask my clients, I usually do this when I first start working with them, is I'll say, hey, what are you worth to somebody else based on your current schedule? You know, I mean, if you really look at everything you do all day on a typical day, what would somebody pay you for that? You know, how much money are you I mean, is your activity lining up with your income goal? You know, are you engaging in things that are gonna create that level of that stream of income for you? Right? So I don't know. Hopefully that's resonating with you guys. Hopefully that's making sense. But to begin this whole question of how do you better manage your time, you got to start by treating it as an asset. That's really all it is.
Oh, love it. So help me with this in how you're talking about it. If I am an agent who wants to earn $100,000, the hourly version of that, working 40 hours a week, is $50 an hour. That would be my value in order to, if I build $50 an hour times 40 hours per year, I make $100,000.
Yep.
So if we lay that against what we do all day, would an agent say, all right, I spent 4 hours doing administrative level work that I would not pay anybody $50 an hour for?
Right. That's right.
Kind of a way to look at that, or?
It is, yeah. It's and one of the things toward the end, I'm going to kind of go through just a little simple plan of action. You know, what can you do today or in the next couple of days to really alter your management of time? And one of the things you got to do is you got to track what you actually do. Because you're right. I mean, there's such a difference between being busy and being productive. And I think for so many agents, they go around all day and they're busy, man. They don't stop. They're reacting to stuff. They're moving. They're, you know, doing this, doing that. And by the end of the day, they're tired. And they feel like, my gosh, I put in such a long day. It was such a busy day. But there's a difference between productivity and motion. Okay. You were in motion all day, but what did you actually produce? What were the activities that, imagine if you're a broker, okay? And I'm just going to, in fact, I'll do this first. I wrote down 3 categories to determine value, okay? 3 categories of time, just to make it simple. There's wasted time, there's administrative time, and there's productive time, okay? So wasted time is obviously worth what?
Zero.
You get paid nothing. But yet look at all the hours we tend to waste doing things that will pay us nothing. And all it does is dilute our dollar per hour. So you might spend a few hours doing some productive stuff, but then you spend a few more hours wasting time in a variety of ways, and it's a wash. Okay, so administrative and support is maybe what, 12 to 18 bucks an hour is kind of a good range depending on what market you're in. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but that's all it's worth. Okay, so any activity that would be categorized as administrative, support, whatever, that's all that stuff is worth. I don't care if you're a $40 million producer and you spend 2 hours doing administrative stuff, it doesn't make it worth any more money. It is what it is. Okay, and then productive time. One of the ways we measure that is if you track your numbers and you look at all the hours you invest in productive activity and the income that comes from that, you can get a pretty good idea, right, of what it's worth. And what I found over the years is that for every $100,000 in your average sales price, productive activities are worth between $200 and $300 an hour. Okay? Now there's a cap on that. Okay?
Say that one more time.
Okay, so for every $100,000 in your average sales price,
okay,
productive activities are worth, let's call it 250 bucks an hour.
Okay.
Okay? So if you are an agent whose average sales price is $300,000 and you are doing productive activities, we're talking about $600, $700, $800 an hour is what those things are effectively worth. I mean, guys, there's not a lot of attorneys that bill at that rate per hour, okay? I mean, we're talking good rate of return. So as a business person, okay, you're a business owner, right? And you're looking at the assets you have, you're looking at the goals that you have for your business. As a business person, you need to employ the people, namely you, to spend at least 80% of their time in productive activity. Okay, that's the goal, is to get at least 80% of the hours you work in productive activity, so you get the highest rate of return. Okay, so as a salesperson, there is a skill level, right? I mean, that does affect things. You could have a brand new agent go out and prospect, which is a productive activity, and they could spend an hour or two, and they're probably not going to get the same results as a 5, 10, 15-year veteran who's been prospecting diligently for many years, right? So there's a skill factor involved. But what I'm trying to say is, look, you look at the things you do all day, you break them into the reality of what kind of category do they fall into, and you accept what they're worth. And then you make decisions based on how you use your time to maximize the activities that are going to pay you the most amount of money. Okay? Which again, lead gen, lead follow-up, going on qualified appointments, negotiating contracts, there's a number of things. I would even say working on your business in a limited degree, spending a couple hours a week in planning, in practicing your scripts and doing things that are going to improve who you are. There's a good rate of return on that.
The way you divide that up into $0 or wasting time, admin, and productive time, it's I guess probably an important note to say, you can farm out the administrative work, but if you don't replace that time with the productive work and you just waste it, then you're actually going backwards.
You're negative 15 an hour, right? Which is even worse.
Right, exactly. At least do it if that's all you're going to do with that extra time.
You got it. Yeah, and that's, it's a legitimate concern for a lot of agents because they think, man, I could use some help. I could use some help with all this administrative stuff and the paperwork and, following up with this and that and the other, but they're afraid to spend the money. But how much profit is there if you spend 15 or 20 bucks an hour and you take that hour and you go get involved in an activity that's going to pay you $300 or $400 or $500 for that hour? It doesn't even make sense. The problem is it's not immediate. You don't get it. And wouldn't it be great if your broker came to you and said, hey, check it out. I watched that time is money conversation that James had and I get it. So here's what I'm going to do. For every hour, at the end of every day, you show up at my office and you document all the things you did all day. We're going to tally up the value per hour and you're going to get a check or some cash for the value of your time today, end of the day. You walk out, you guys would never leave your desk. You'd be prospecting all day. You'd be following up all day because you knew you'd be collecting big bucks, right?
Yes.
Problem is you don't get it in advance like that. It'd be great if you could, right? But it's the belief it's the faith that, hey man, if I do these things, these activities are going to pay me, but it might take 90 days before I collect on the money.
Makes sense.
So again, you look at, like I said, you know, as a business person, you say, okay, what we have available to us, 80% of the hours should be spent in productive activity. As a salesperson, you're working on your skill set so that you can make the most of those hours that you spend doing productive activity. But again, as we said, you are getting paid according to the sum total of everything you do, right? So basically, it comes down to, you have a choice every day. How you spend your time will determine how much time spends on you. Okay? Mm-hmm. So how much income do you want to earn? Right? What the real estate industry is prepared to pay you, however much you want to earn, but you have to commit the time in the right activities to doing it. Mm-hmm. So again, the whole issue of prioritizing and deciding, which is the hard part, that's the agonizing part, because you've got a list of 10 things that you would look at and say, man, these are important things. I'd like to get to all 10 of them. Problem is my schedule, the amount of time that I have only allows me to do 4. So how do I pick the 4? Mm-hmm. Well, you try, first of all, by looking at which 4 are going to give you the highest rate of return. Mm-hmm. And then you look for ways to maybe leverage or delegate or in some way get help with the other 6. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, it's not a lot of magic pills here, but it's about deciding that I see what I'm worth. I accept that if I choose to get involved in this activity, I'm only making $15 an hour. I'm only making maybe 20 for each hour I spend doing it. Am I okay with that? Am I okay going home at the end of the day feeling like, well, I made about, $163 today. You know what I mean? With what I did. Mm-hmm. Is that taking you in the direction you've said you want to go? Mm-hmm. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does. And so could you just spend 1 second? I'm sure this is a bit of a bunny trail, but in your opinion, what are the top things agents do that are disguised as productive behavior, where they're almost fooling themselves?
Right.
That's not really in that category of productive behavior. What do you say? Fools.
Okay. And, some of this stuff is controversial. I mean, I would say a certain thing and they'd be like, oh no, man, that's important. I got to do that. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. My benchmark for a lot of these things is the fact that I see other agents who have other people do them for them, and it works out just fine. So, for example, calling for feedback on showings, okay? Oh. Collecting feedback after showings and disseminating that information to the sellers. Yeah. That is an important part of the process of communicating with your client, but it doesn't need to be done by you, right? Okay? Photographing properties. I've said this. I have so many agents that I've met over the years who would almost convince you that they double as a professional photographer, because it's like, oh, nobody takes the pictures as well as I do. It's like, I've got this incredible camera and I know the angles and this and that. Hey, that's fine. But I'm sure you can find a professional photographer who's not going to charge you, if you spent 2 hours there, that's what, $600? I don't think many photographers are charging you $600 a listing. I hope not.
That's right.
Okay. So, I mean, those are a couple of examples. I think another one might be, and again, this is controversial, but attending certain activities along the way. Let's say you've got some inspection repairs that have to be done, and the client can't be home, so there's the contractors coming to do their estimates and their bids. You don't have to be the one that shows up to let them into the property. You can have a showing assistant. You can have a licensed assistant. You can have other people doing those things, okay? Mm-hmm. So I think part of the answer to this is that as your production grows and your value per hour becomes higher and higher, there's a lot more that falls into the realm of letting go, okay? So if you're a brand new agent and you're doing 15, 20 deals a year and you want to go do some of these things, that's probably not the end of the world. But try doing 75 deals a year and doing all those things. It's not going to work. So I think anything that is data input related should be one of the first things, okay? Putting listings into the MLS, uploading them to, all the sites, right, onto social media and Zillow and whatever. Those types of things should be probably the first types of activities. that even though you might be really good at it, okay, you need to let it go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
So yeah, basically, I guess as we kind of work our way through this conversation, it's like going right back to what I said at the beginning. Time is money. It's a currency, okay? And you have to change the belief that you have in the value of your time. Once you accept that and you realize that every decision you make has a financial consequence.
Mm-hmm.
I have two options here. I can spend an hour doing this, or I can spend an hour doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to start leaning more in the direction of the things that are going to pay higher dollar per hour so that you have the cash flow to leverage.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the cash flow to pay somebody $15 or $20 an hour to do all this other stuff for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I guess, again, if we just look at a plan, okay? So because a lot of agents are going to say, well, okay, where do I start? What is the first step that I should take in this whole process, right? So I think the first thing under the little plan that I wrote down is you have to track your time. Okay, you need to know, what are you doing all day? Like, where does your time actually go? So that you know where to begin cutting. All right. As a matter of fact, if you guys that are watching this, if you want a copy of a very simple, I call it a time and motion tracker. Okay. Just send me an email. You can email me at coachjameshotelling@gmail.com, and I'll just send you one. All right. It's a very simple form that I have all my clients use, and it allows you to track and monitor where your time goes. Okay. If you worked with a fitness or a nutritionist, right? What's one of the first things they have you do?
Yeah, true.
You track what you eat all day, right? So they want to see food journal. What are you putting in your body? What do we need to cut out? What do we need to add more of? Where are your weak points? Okay. So again, email me, coachjameshotelling@gmail.com. I'll send you one. You put your schedule down one side and you make a commitment to tracking down the other side. What did you actually do? And then you go back and look at it after a week or maybe a couple of weeks, and you immediately start to see all the things that aren't working based on your current time management strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that's the first thing you got to do. Second thing under the plan is it's kind of a 3-step question process to ask yourself, okay? So you've got a plan for the day. You've got a plan for what you want your morning to look like, okay? Something comes up. There are always things coming up, things you have to react to, right, that are going to threaten to pull you off of your schedule. So 3 simple questions. Number 1 is this activity actually necessary? Because there's a lot of things we get confronted with. I don't know if you've had this experience at all yet this week, Monica, but you get things thrown at you that you feel like you might need to spend time on, but when you really look at it for a minute, you realize, you know what, this isn't even necessary. I don't even need to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
I can just delete it. I can get rid of it. I don't have to actually deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But let's say it's something that is necessary. Okay? It's an activity that you've got to deal with. So the second question is, does it have to be handled by me? Am I the only one that can actually deal with this thing that has come up? Or could my assistant handle it? Could I ask the lender to deal with it? Could I delegate it to my client? Could my broker handle it? Right? There are maybe other people involved that could handle this. Good example. Yesterday, had a coaching call with this lady that I've been coaching for several years. She's involved in hiring another assistant. She has a current assistant who is really more of a transaction coordinator, and she also shows property and sells property. And so she's thinking about the training process for this new person. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why can't you delegate a good portion of the training to your other assistant? Let her walk this new person through the basic things that they need to learn and save you all that time. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, yeah, I guess, that's pretty interesting. I always tend to put everything on my shoulders. It was kind of what she said. She tries to own everything. And I said, man, you've got a lot better things that you could be doing than training this new assistant when you've got somebody else that already knows how you do it. And they can train them for you. Mm-hmm. Okay? So is it necessary? Does it have to be done by me? Let's say the answer is yes. Okay? Third layer of question to ask yourself is, does it have to be done right now? You know, is this so urgent that it has to interrupt my schedule, or can I find a block of time later today to deal with this thing that only I can handle?
Mm-hmm.
So if you get this in the habit, right, of running all this stuff through that 3-layer process, you'll be surprised. A lot of things you realize, not even necessary. I don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Second layer is, I guess I don't have to do that. I can give that to somebody else.
I love it. I love it. And even if you are, I'm sitting here thinking, if you don't have an assistant, these questions still apply because you can always outsource on a project basis.
Yes.
I have had a lot of help in my career.
Yep.
I have not always had an assistant, but I have had a transaction coordinator, which is a cost of sale. I have paid a showing assistant $25 at a time to open a door. That's, project more driven stuff, right?
Yep.
So you can think of it in a couple different ways.
That's right. And there are many different services out there. There's a great one called FreeUp that is available. They're such a great service. They have people that can do anything and everything. Limited project, there's no long-term commitment, there's no minimum. They can do pretty much anything you can think of and help you out at extremely reasonable rates. It's a great company that this guy has put together. So check it out, freeup.com. I think it's got 3 E's, free with 3 E's, up.com.
Cool.
It's, again, for you guys that are looking to delegate a little bit. In fact, that's part of this plan that I wrote down is you need to be willing to hire out when it saves you time. A great example that I've used for many years is courier services. Okay, especially if you live in a fairly large area, there are probably lots of courier services that might charge you $20, $25 to show up at your office, pick up something that has to be physically taken across town. Maybe it's hard copy documents that need a signature. Maybe it's something that needs to be dropped off. It's going to take you an hour with traffic to get there and an hour back. Okay, so if you're billing out at $300, $400, $500 an hour, there's $1,000 to ching just like that when you look at it that way, right? Or you could pay a courier service even if they charge you $50. Is it worth it to save 2 hours of your time? Like you said, though, assuming that you reinvest it into an activity that's worth better dollars. So you've got to be willing to pay and leverage where possible so that you can capture more hours a day to invest into productive activity. It's the bottom line.
Love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are 2 things. Actually, I guess it's 3 things. Right away, that is terms of a plan. Track your time. Is to ask yourself those 3 questions. Is this necessary? Does it have to be done by me? And does it have to be done right now? Number 3 is delegate and hire out whenever you can possibly afford to do that. Number 4 is we want to just eradicate wasted time out of your day. Okay? Distractions always take you further than you thought you wanted to go. They cost you more money than you thought you were willing to spend, and they make you stay longer than you ever wanted to stay. That's the definition of a distraction. And it is costing money every time you give into it. So you got to be ruthless. You got to guard your time like you guard your wallet, like you guard your credit card, like you guard. Look at all the safeguards that we put on our financial accounts to keep people out from our money, right? But yet we freely give away our time on wasted activities, stupid activities, things that pay next to nothing, because we haven't bought into the idea that your time is an asset. It's currency.
Right.
So you got to guard it, and you got to spend it with the same care that you spend your money. Okay.
Love it. Yes.
And the last thing I wrote down is to track your numbers, because like I said before, the only way you're going to really see this is when you track your numbers and you see what your time is actually worth. Okay. You can take my word for it. I believe me, you can trust that what I'm telling you is true. But when you see it for yourself and you realize that, oh my gosh, in the first quarter, for every single person I spoke to, that equated to $36. It doesn't matter what they said to me. If I made a contact during prospecting, I earned $36 just for them picking up the phone and talking to me, or whatever the number is, right? That starts to make an impression.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it. Yep. Especially with Espresso Agent, you can track how many people you've talked to and picked up.
You got it.
You could monetize the number of dials. But
You could. Yeah, you easily could do that. Hey, every time I dial the phone, cha-ching, there's $3.
right. That would
You know,
motivate.
how many times, if your broker was willing to pay you $3 or even $5 or whatever every time you dialed the phone, you would never leave your desk. I mean, you'd hook up a little porta potty right next door. You'd be ordering in. You wouldn't leave. You'd dial 1,000 times a day and collect $3,000 and walk out the door like, woohoo, you know?
Yes. The day
That's $60,000 a month, guys. I mean, that's not bad.
No doubt, no doubt. You know what kills me too, and you've probably seen this, is when agents get out of the business and they go to like a telecommunication company where they're dialing for development for somebody else.
Yeah.
Paycheck, right? If you spent that much time on the phone for yourself in real estate, you'd be making 7 times the amount of money.
Easily, yeah, easily. And again, there's a skill part of it, of course, right? You have to develop the ability to actually claim that income per hour, but it's not that difficult, right? I mean, you guys have classes all the time on expired scripts, FSBO scripts, whatever. Yeah. So again, if the thing you take away from the conversation today is that every hour that is available to you every day that you're alive has a large price tag attached to it. Mm-hmm. You can choose to cash it in for a lot of money, or you can choose to cash it in for pennies. Mm-hmm. It's your choice. Like I said, how you choose to spend your time will determine how much money time spends on you.
That's
okay,
right.
So
let's have everyone in the comment bar tell Coach James and I what you think what your biggest excuse is. Like, what's your story that you're telling yourself you need to do that maybe, just maybe now you're kind of seeing it a little differently? Like, what excuse do you use all the time that causes you to miss your your highest productivity activities? I would love to hear from people like their realization.
Yeah, great thought. Because and this isn't necessarily the topic of our conversation today, but if you do a little business planning conversation, right? You look at, hey, I want to earn X amount of dollars, and I know it's going to take a certain number of closings to do that, and to have that many closings, I've got to have this many listings sell and this many buyer sales, and to sell that many listings, I got to take this many, and then I got to go on so many appointments, I have to generate so many leads, blah, 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 blah. And you break it down and you say, okay, I got to talk to 15 people a day is my number, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's going to take me, I don't know, a couple hours probably. Mm-hmm. Why don't you do the 2 hours? What gets in the way? What are you choosing to do instead? Mm-hmm. Where are you redeeming that time that is not paying you what it could be paying you? So, yeah, anybody got a comment or a question?
No, there. Oh, here's Stacy. Thank you, Stacy, for participating. Handling the loudest problem. Oh, yeah. Whatever's screaming the loudest for sure. At the moment, distracts me from my best productive activities. Stacy, extremely insightful and honest. Thank you.
Yeah. So the question would be, how do these distractions find you? How do you even know about them?
That's good.
And I don't know if she's dialoguing back, but Stacy, you may be typing back at the moment, but here's what I hear most often when I ask that question. And I'll show you mine right here. It's called our phone, right? That's how the distractions get to us, because our phone's going off all the time. I got a client in Chicago, and one of the things we talked about a couple months ago was the reality that her all these things screaming at her kept her from getting into her morning routine that we had already determined was going to help her to hit her goal. So she took one of her old phones that she still had, reactivated it, okay? And then took her current phone, left it in the other room, shut the door, and prospected from her old phone that all it was a phone. Nobody had the number. Right. Nobody could text her. It wasn't hooked up, to all the other nonsense and apps and blah, it wasn't screaming at her.
Right. Hey, a year ago, I have a tip for this, because James, you're speaking my language on that. And Stacy, you're speaking my language. 1 year ago, I went in my settings and I took off notifications for my email and my Facebook and my text. And so now I don't get any red dots that Pavlov's dog, like I've got to answer it the minute I'll check my phone's email. I'll check my email when I want to. I'll check my Facebook when I want to, not when my phone tells me to.
That's right. That's exactly right. Because remember what I said, the time management, a function of two things. I said, number one is having a stronger belief in the value of your time. And number two was developing the discipline to act on it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's like, yeah, I know I shouldn't be doing this right now, but I can't help myself. Right. Yeah. I mean, hey, if you walk to your work every day and you're trying to lose weight, would it be a good idea to not walk right by the Krispy Kreme donut shop every day on your way to work? I mean, come on, give yourself a chance to succeed, for goodness sake. So if your phone is the problem, if all these other things are the problem, you gotta be ruthless. You've got to get rid of them.
You're right. You're right.
Most of those things will wait. And you and I both know it, because you know what? A lot of times you go into an appointment, you're in an appointment for an hour, maybe 2 hours in some cases. You come out of the appointment and you've had 9 missed calls, you've got 14 texts, 11 voicemails, 195 notifications from Facebook or whatever, and you haven't responded to a single one in 2 hours. Right. Does life end? Do the deals fall apart? Do the clients fire you? None of that stuff that you worry about actually happens.
True.
It's totally fine. You'll get back to them.
Yeah.
So it's lots of things you could do. So I don't know if Stacy got back to us.
Good advice. She said she's removed Facebook and email and everything, all the other notifications. She did that, but the calls and the texts still come to her, which I get it. It's one of those things. James, what do you think? Talk a little bit about this idea of simplification and how it can help our time management, meaning simplifying the activities and the things that we actually allow to be on our calendar. Because I think we have to try everything, or we have to have a lot of to-dos versus if you do 1 or 2 things that you're going to do really well instead of 10 things.
Right.
Can that help too?
It can absolutely. I think it's so important to plan every day. And I know that feels like another to-do that you don't have time. I've got to put on my to-do list to work on my to-do list. Well, yeah, I get it. It's hard, but if you will develop the discipline to plan out your day and look at all the things that are available, and maybe you start ranking them in priority. I mean, these are the things that I really need to get to today. Mm-hmm. And I can only allow myself 3 things or however many it is, right? And everything else is going to have to wait. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, again, you can't change the fact that you only have so many hours in the day. Mm-hmm. That is a fixed constant you can do nothing about. Mm-hmm. So you got to accept that. That is the hardest part of time management, is learning to say no. Because the things you have to say no to are things you don't want to say no to. You, in some cases, don't feel like you can say no to them, mm-hmm. but you have to. Mm-hmm. Until you have somebody else to give them to. As soon as you have somebody else to give them to and you've trained them, great. But eventually the business will continue to grow, and you and that person will both be busy, and then there comes the next person, right?
Yeah.
I kind of ran through quickly a list of productive things that I had suggested. If you can get 80% of your time every day to be involved in those, 5 or 6 things. It was lead generation, lead follow-up, negotiating contracts if necessary, going on appointments if you have them that are fully qualified, mm-hmm. and working on your business, okay, which would include things like reading for 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, get something good into your head, mm-hmm. Work on your scripts for 15 to 30 minutes a day to get better at what you do. Mm-hmm. Those are money-making activities.
Yeah,
so
that's right there. That's about as simple as it comes. If it's one of those, then it's not that important.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again,
go ahead.
Well, just to say, there are other things that you can't do anything about. You got to check emails. You got to respond to text. You got to do some of those things. Technically, somebody else probably could do them for you, but right now there may not be anybody else. So you've just got to be disciplined that you don't let a 30-minute task. Okay, so let's say, if you're being honest, you say, yeah, I think I can check and respond. Most of the time, I can deal with my emails in 30 minutes. Okay, mm-hmm. So for that 30 minutes, if you're saying that somebody else would do that for you at a $12 to $15 an hour rate, mm-hmm. 30 minutes means it's $6 to $7 or whatever. That's what you're earning. Don't let it take an hour. Mm-hmm. Okay, because you're interrupted 12 times. Like, you've got to get through those lower paying things as quickly as you can so you can get back to the high dollar stuff.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So can you think of a client of yours, whether you have them active right now or somebody that you've coached in the past, that really kind of had this mastered, this idea of time management, spent his or her time extremely purposefully all day long? What would be the one thing you'd sort of pull out of or tip from that person that you've seen that's like, that works?
Yeah. It's a great question. Yes, I can think of several of them.
Okay.
And I think the one characteristic would be they were the discipline again. They were so determined. They believed this with all their heart, and there was no way they were going to let somebody else or something else intrude. And so they would go into a locked office. They would take other steps to block themselves off or eliminate any possibility for distraction to get through. Mm-hmm. Right? So those are the steps they took based on the belief that they had that I cannot let anything get into this 3 or 4 hour time period.
Yes.
So the level of seriousness that you have about your business, the level of determination that you have to improve your income, improve your production, that is going to determine how radical the steps are that you're willing to take to guard your time.
Oh, I love that. It just gave me the analogy of, if you're going on a diet, you don't allow all the junk food in your pantry. The first thing you do is rid yourself of all the food that you're going to buying, and you stock up on the good food. And that's what you're doing if you're isolating yourself for an hour to do your calls, whatever you just said. Yep.
But see, going through your pantry and deciding what to eliminate is just like tracking your time. You have to look at your time for a period of, say, a week, and you look at all you add it up, and you're like, oh my gosh, this week I spent 12 hours in completely wasted time. And 12 hours might be generous. It might be more like 20 hours when you really look at it with a critical eye. But I mean, that's what you eliminate first, is like rip all those activities out of your life that are $0 per hour. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have any enjoyment in life. You don't take 10 minutes to look up the sports quotes or, read the profile of the big game last night or whatever. But you see it for what it is. You put it in a block of time that you say, I know this is time that doesn't have anything to do with my business, but it's something I'm interested in, and I'm going to limit it. Okay. I know lots of agents that limit their Facebook time, their social media time to like 2 15-minute windows a day. And that's all they give themselves, because they know themselves. If they let themselves go hog wild, they'd be on there for hours lost in Facebook world and making nothing.
No doubt. No doubt. That's good. Stacy came to the realization that maybe she should set a timer for those kind of activities. That's a great idea.
Yep.
At least there's an awareness around then that the timer goes off and you're like, oh, wow, this should have been enough. Where did I get stuck?
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Maybe instead of a timer, you put an alarm on your phone, and the sound you identify with it is the ching of a cash register drawer opening, because it's the reminder time is money.
That is good. Love it.
Time is money, guys.
All right. Parting thoughts, and how can people connect with you if they want more of your wisdom, which is awesome?
Well, as I mentioned, coachjameshotelling@gmail.com. So please email me. I'll send you one of those time tracking forms that I talked about that I use with my clients. So you can connect with me that way. You can find me on Facebook, just facebook.com/jameshotelling. And those are probably the 2 easiest ways to get in touch with me is through social media and or email.
Do you offer like kind of a free conversation to see if you'd be a fit for coaching for somebody, or how does that work? Okay.
Yep. Initial agent evaluation calls. Yep, absolutely. In fact, I have just a 3-page form that if somebody was interested in that, I would send it to them. It would they'd fill it out. It would give me a nice overview of where they're coming from, what some of their challenges are, what they're looking for. And it just facilitates that conversation. And 100% free, no obligation. So feel free to reach out to me. Let me know what I can do to help.
Perfect. You've been awesome. And I really think if nothing else, this hour has expanded people's minds to think about their day a little differently. And it
I hope
just
so.
is there, right?
I hope so. Like I said, a lot of people get into a time management class thinking we're going to talk about the schedule and some new app, and it's all up here. When you totally buy into the fact that your hours in the day are redeemable for various amounts of money, and you get to choose, then you just develop the discipline to back up that commitment that you have. And it's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to stick with it. You're going to fall off the wagon a few times, but you know what? If you just commit to tracking your time and making some adjustments, you're going to see a big difference in a very short period of time.
And 1% better every day gets you there over.
It does. It does. So, hey, I just want to thank you guys. Thank you, Eden, again. You, of course, Monica, and Jan and Melissa and all the rest there for giving me this venue, this chance to share. So, I just want to thank you guys.
Absolutely. We appreciate you and your time that you donate to us, and hope you have a good day. And
thank you.
Espresso Agent Nation, hope you've enjoyed this hour. Feel free to watch it back if you want on the YouTube channel that they have. So,
okay.
We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye now.